So, hi, welcome to Unscripted, where women's power talks. I'm with Bobuchi Ken, a PhD candidate and researcher at Carnegie Mellon, and a whole bunch of other things. Welcome, Bobuchi.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. It's going to be really exciting to see, how this flows, especially
Yeah,
like she said, it's no script. And so, we'll see. We'll see.
yeah. Well, I just in preparation for talking with you today, I was looking over some of the things at Nethport Studio and you and your sister, and I felt so happy just tapping into the energy that you are bringing to what you're doing in life and the fire clearly that's in your belly. So tell me a little bit about that. Like tell first of all, introduce yourself. What are your projects? What are you working on? And what really gets you excited? And then we'll launch from there.
Okay. So I'm Bobuchi. I'm Nigerian, born and raised. I'm currently here studying at Carnegie Mellon University, doing my PhD. It's in architecture, engineering, construction management. But my thesis is in climate resilient housing for like lower income and middle income homes, especially like informal settlements in Nigeria.
Mhm.
Um, it's been really exciting doing that. I think that's kind of really brought my passion for social responsibility and like social work to the forefront of like the construction industry that I've been in this whole time. Um, and that just really helped to ignite my work with working with communities, like lower income communities, both here in the US and in Nigeria. You had asked like what gets me excited. I think it's like it's really cliche, but like honestly, waking up every day and knowing that I'm doing something towards my dreams and my goals is like really what gets me excited. Like sometimes like I just don't want to do anything. And there are days where I don't do anything, but sometimes I'm like, whatever. But then I remember the like way I have these dreams and I have these like goals that I want to achieve. So I get up and get back to work. So that's honestly kind of one of the main things that just gets me going every single day. So
So, talk a little bit more specifically about what are some of these dreams and goals. Obviously, that work you're doing to support,
yeah.
housing in low income communities. I mean, that's energizing. But what are specifically some of your goals? I mean, what is it that gets you so, motivated?
So I think primarily is because I grew up in Nigeria and I've seen speaking of Nigeria, there's like a lot of unrest going on right now, and that is what I grew up in, is just seeing the disparity, socioeconomic classes, tribalism, that sort of thing, and I seen like people who, if you don't know anyone in Nigeria, you tend not to really get far in life. It's like a who you know situation. It's a classist situation, and I've seen people who are really brilliant being left behind. They don't have as many opportunities, and to me, it's always my drive is like, how do I help these people build like what they use what they have to like get somewhere? How do I help by providing like infrastructure? So part of me is also like, oh, I want to go back and help get like sustainable infrastructure, sustainable energy like going, because you can't do much without electricity, and we don't have electricity in Nigeria. Like the government doesn't care. So it's like, how can I help get sustainable and resilient renewable electricity situated so people are able to start industries and people are able to have factories and small businesses able to start and be sustainable without spending majority of the money on decentralized energy generation. I also want to help provide affordable housing. It's like, okay, people stay in really poor conditions in slums and informal settlements where sewage and sanitation is like not a priority because you just want to get food on your table. So it's like, how can I help affordable, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure to communities and households that, right now it's not priority, because I know the government's not going to do it. And that's kind of what we're fighting for right now too in Nigeria, is how do we get the government to care, and they don't care. Like I was just watching the supposed announcement by the president. He said absolutely not. He said rubbish. He said we should stop protesting or we're going to face the wrath. That is what our presidents do, right? So it's like no one cares anymore for a top-down approach. We now have to help ourselves or we will die. So it's like, how my dreams have always been to just come and provide the baseline or the foundation, like electricity, infrastructure, drainage, that will help people achieve what they can achieve without the government's help, because they're not, clearly it's not priority for them. So Yeah. I know I'm
So
not
it's empowering people to
Yeah,
take matters into their own hands and giving them
yeah,
tools that they need to
yeah,
make it and do what they need to do independent
yeah,
of whatever's going to come to help.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If
Okay.
any
So
possible.
let me just say something, because one of the things that super comes forward when you talk, and it's very clear that you have a lot of gifts and abilities, right? I mean, just reading all the stuff that you and your sister are doing, I love it, right? But man, do I also within that feel the burden and that sense of responsibility. And here you are, one person, you're young, you have a lot of energy, which is fantastic. But, you know, really it's like transforming the
Yeah.
system I hear you talking about. So, that's a lot to carry, right? So, first of all, what has brought you to the point? I know that there have been really important people who are very gifted that you've left behind. You feel like, okay, this is not fair. They should have advantages too. They should have a way forward, right? But so much burden for someone that's so young. Tell me about that. Because a lot
Um,
of people your age are like, whatever, here I am, party down, let's go, right?
yeah.
But you are holding a really big space. So tell me about that a little bit. Is that your parents? Like, where did
Yeah,
it come
I do think it's my family. I don't remember a time where we didn't help people. Like my dad has always funded people's like tuition since I was like really young, sent a lot of people to school. We've helped like build schools in like rural areas and villages
from?
where they don't have books. We provided books, we provided like water, by drilling boreholes, just getting like textbooks, set up libraries. So I don't know, like I think that really is what it is. Like when you grow up in that sort of situation, you don't see anything else besides like constantly helping people. Um, and that's why sometimes I talk to like I'm talking to my sister, I'm talking to my friends, and I'm saying, I think it's crazy that someone gets into power and they don't have that hard. I don't know. Like I couldn't imagine getting into a situation where I have the power and I don't want to provide for people who don't have, resources and who don't have options, because that's not how we were raised. We were raised to help as many people as we can. Like when we see someone who we have the resources to help them, we should provide help, especially kids, because
Yeah.
kids and they didn't choose to be born into the situations they're born in. So I don't know. That's just how we're raised. So to me, it's like a main factor in my life, and I guess I don't know how it became like a driving factor, but it's just always been there. And so yeah,
So do you ever struggle with creating balance? Like, how do I step back a little bit? How do I, because to really relax is about taking time, taking something
yeah,
for yourself. And with that constant burden, my goodness, there are people who dying who don't have opportunities in a pretty critical situation. How do you justify then with that mentality, I have to help? I mean, how do you navigate that space? Because that's not unusual
yeah,
for people who feel the call to really serve others, right? So
yeah.
how do you figure that out?
I have like I can take like breaks. I have moments where like even today, just everything was just so overwhelming that I'm not on social media as much today. And I have times where I just read a book or I just watch Netflix. Um, or I just like, I like boxing. So I go boxing or I go running and I'm not thinking about it. It could take like 2 or 3 days where I'm not doing any major thinking, or um like even our initiative second platform, like there are times where I just don't do anything on there just because I don't have the mental capacity to deal with that at that moment. But most of the times, what I do find stresses me out is actually like my work. So I'm a researcher, and so at the Center of Building Performance and Diagnostics, and sometimes the work I get there actually stresses me out more than like the additional stuff. And so that's the part where I feel very stressed. That makes me cry all the time because it gives me so much panic attacks because there are deadlines for that. It's like I have to do this by a certain time. With the work that I'm doing on the side, I build my own timeline. So it's not like I'm in a hurry to do anything necessarily. So I can take my time with that. But then everything else just kind of falls around me where It's like this deadline and this deadline, that deadline. That's what stresses me out. And that's the part that I actually can't check out from because I get paid to
Right.
do it. That's the one that I cannot, take a break from. So it's easier for me to take a break from the side jobs because it's mine. But I still know that the drive is still there. So I'm able to take a few days off. But would I prefer to take a few days off from like my main source of income? Yes. That's actually what I would, because I get more pleasure and more happiness doing like everything else, sometimes. So
So is that kind of interesting information for you in terms of your future? What gives you joy and what stresses you out? Is it impacting what you're thinking? Well, I'm going to school, I'm doing this stuff, this is my work, but this is where my joy lies. This is where my is that shifting priorities for you?
um
Discovering those pieces in yourself?
so funny you should say that because I've actually had moments where I've spoken to my advisor this past month where I was like, started panic because I'm going to get done soon, like next year. I've started panicking, like, oh my God, what if I get a job and it's so miserable and my life is just so miserable? I'm so unhappy because I know what I want to do. The issue is not it's not like I don't like what I'm doing, like research wise, I do. I found a way to merge it into social work that I also like. But it's like, how many companies or how many organizations will hire me to do what I want to do, right? And that's kind of what I'm seeing right now too. It's like the research I do when it's not my thesis, when I'm doing like other research, sometimes I'm like, I don't really care, But if it's my thesis, that brings me joy because it's what I want to do. It's socially based. It's, I'm working on resilient housing for lower income communities. That brings me joy. And so it's like, I've started to realize that, yeah, I'm in a predicament come when I'm done because I have to go work in this company that may or may not care about, what brings me joy, or the work may become very mundane, or the work will not have value. And when it doesn't have value, that takes me off. Like, I can't imagine going to work every day and I'm building a Walmart. Like, Walmart's important somewhere, but it's who is that helping, right? So if the job doesn't bring value, that's one of my fears is I need to find something that's going to bring value to the world and bring value to myself. And that's why I've been panicking on job searches for the past month.
Well, you know what? You are bringing up this really critical piece relative to personal authority. And it's
Yeah,
about defining what one's joy is and what fills one with meaning, because there's deep satisfaction in that, right? As you know
yeah,
already. But then how do I merge this into my work? So
yeah,
every day when I go to work, there's this deep sense of purpose, right?
exactly.
And I
Yeah,
hear that that's where you're at. You're thinking
yeah,
that through. But I'm just going to throw this out here because, man, you seem to me like a leader for the 21st century. I mean, you talk about all these people that are, risen to the top and are not really there to serve the people, for whom they are sort of responsible
yeah,
as in positions of leadership. And then you look at women like you, who that is their whole call to leadership,
yeah.
right? And that is what we're all desperate for. I mean, everybody's desperate for this type of leadership. So I'm just going to say it. What about stepping into a pathway of becoming a leader in a very direct way, and then leveraging all these things that you do and and what about something like that?
So I have really considered like, going into either like some sort of minister of something position where I'm able to direct a lot more public resources into doing a lot more work on a grander scale. But then I'm a realist. I see the pushback that currently exists, especially for women trying to go into politics or women trying to go into leadership positions in Nigeria, and just how I don't know if Nigeria is ready. But I'm also a little bit scared of the pushback because looking at Nigerian politics right now, using 2020's political, whatever, they're able to use violence to prevent something from happening. So I'm like, I had this little fear, like, okay, what if this is still how it is in like 10 years? If I want to pursue this in 10 years and this is still how it is, do I really want to go forward with it? But then if nobody goes forward with it, then we're still going to be doing the same cycle of, what we are. So it's something I'm considering. I'm like, maybe in 10 years, I feel stronger to want to take on that, journey, or maybe not. Maybe I'll just help in some other way. But I do see myself at some point, at least, like you said, having some leadership like position, maybe a public one, or it could be like a private one where I'm influencing public decisions. You never know.
So, do you have a cohort of other people with your vision and your energy to support you and to feed off of and to vision together?
Yeah, my group of friends, we had this very similar minded, views, and we always on FaceTime studying together, always working together. We've had like a lot of dreams for both ourselves and like the communities we come from. So to me, that's definitely a driving force. I think like a lot of times where I feel broken and I'm crying over something, like I call them and they put everything into perspective. And so I always tell people, it's like, everyone needs some sort of like support system, because you
Yes,
can't go through life without one.
that's
You will
right.
lose your mind. And so my friends are definitely my support system. My dad's like one of my major support systems. He's a feminist. Like he probably doesn't even know what he means, but he's the definition
Yep.
of a feminist. And he's just always been there to push me and my sister. Like, you can achieve. To him, he doesn't see like, oh, you're a female. To him, it's like, you're a human being. Go ahead and do what you want to do, right? Why can't you do it? And somebody like, why can't a guy do it and you can't do it? To him, that's crazy. So he's always like pushed us. Um, and I think yesterday my sister was talking to me about she wants to be a politician now. He's like, sure, sounds good. So, he's very supportive. My friends are very supportive. I think also faith in God is just like really, to me, it's something that also helps me, remember that there's also a bigger being that
Yeah.
has my back, regardless. So
So you also, when we were talking before our conversation today, you were saying that your work um, with women and violence against women is really important to you and that you wanted to have that be a part of our conversation. So let's bring that forward. You have the second platform, you're doing all these different things. First of all, share what you're doing and then what's happening with that.
so the second platform is like an initiative that we technically haven't officially launched, but we do have some like programs that have started. The general idea, we started in 2012, like just all about awareness. And so we were doing like a lot of like blog posts and just bringing like news to the forefront. But then I started to notice that, like, it's not, to me, I like things that have practicality.
Yeah.
um, and I was realizing that I wasn't giving as much of a change that I wanted it to do. So we had to take a hiatus and come like, okay, how can we take this from just like awareness to actually solution focused? Like, I want to be on the ground doing something physically that I can see the benefits, right, over time. And so, like, what, perhaps like you start looking at what is the relationship between violence, gendered violence, and gender inequality in like certain global South communities, and patriarchy and and rape and all that stuff. And we're like, what? Sometimes it's because, for example, with domestic violence, sometimes it's because the person doesn't have the funds or the resources to leave. So like, okay, how can we help them have those resources? How can we help them grow a business that they're probably doing, or start a business, or get better education so they're able to fight for higher paying jobs and that sort of thing. So we're like, okay, we could start doing like classes, um, like mentorship classes, or help people set up business plans, and help them create right grants to get funding to expand their businesses or start businesses. We also thought about like the girl child. A lot of times, yeah, there's a huge disparity in education. Like they would rather the guy go to school and the girl goes gets married or whatever. So it's like, how do we help those sort of situation where even though their parents may prevent them from going to like normal school, how can we start to teach them as like tutors after hours? Like if they go to work with their parents, they can come back and learn. And that way I start to teach them the value of education and the value of dreaming and wanting to be something. And then we started looking like data is also a really important like aspect of disruption. People feel really complacent sometimes. So you give them the raw data, like, look, 1 in 10 people in your neighborhood probably get raped every other day. So that gets people like riled up, like, oh, okay, now we want to do something. So it's like, we want to use data for women, we want to provide mentoring, we want to provide like tutoring for education. And in the long term, I do want to be able to help people, like help women either be able to build homes themselves through self-building, be able to leave situations, get lawyers that can help them leave bad situations and that sort of thing. So we're going to start next year, at least with the first, like the data, with the teaching and with the mentorship. But then later on, we do hope in the long term we're able to evolve and grow second platform. And so what we're doing right now is the podcast, because we still want to have that awareness part. And so our podcast just talks about lesser known acts of sexual violence that people don't really know about, like stealthing or adultification or withdrawal consent. And so we try to talk about those in like really short bursts of like 5 minute, 6 minute conversations. And then for our interlude, we just had the first episode of our interlude. We talk with actual women in this field. We spoke to someone, she's a human rights advocate and activist, she's a lawyer as well. And we try to talk to her about like, how she's using social media to impact um, her community as well, to change and understand that like women deserve rights and women deserve to be, treated a lot better and equality and that sort of thing. So we're trying to use the podcast to just bring more awareness on a larger scale. The plan is to convert. So right now it's in English, but we know that English, not everyone speaks English.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the plan is, have like a French version, Hindi version, um, multiple like languages where we're able to reach a larger range of people. So
So do you also envision it as something of a hub where people who are interested in
yeah,
have similar goals that can then say, hey, let's work together or
yeah.
seek
Especially with
funding?
mentorship, yeah. We do want to have some sort of like community where people who want to come, mentor, provide grants, that sort of
Mhm.
thing can all just like network together
Yeah.
and help people as much as they can in that way. Because we're just 2 people right now. So we know we need to definitely allow a lot more engagement and collaboration. And so there's even actually like another organization that we're trying to reach out to, is Diaspora Nigeria, and they teach women how to like sew and improve their trade. So you do want to collaborate with them. So collaboration is like one of the main factors that we're trying to expand on, just to reach a larger like group of people.
So is there a particular reason that you were drawn to work on gendered violence, or is it just one of the pressing social issues that you
Um,
grew up having to face?
Interesting. I think my first introduction to like gendered violence was, I don't know, 2009 or something like that. I was watching some lady called Natalie Grant, and she had an organization. What was it called? Destiny Hope or something. I can't remember what it was, but I remember watching it. That was like my first introduction. I mean, I knew about it, but like I didn't know that. Like I didn't know about it till like
Yeah.
2009 or something like that. And so I watched, and I remember telling my mom, was like, "Oh, I want to have like um, a rehabilitation center for like women who are like in domestic violence situations." And so, and a lot of the things that I do now, it's like dreams I had when I was younger. Like my family always thought, like, and that's also why I like my family, was very supportive. Like when I was younger, I told my dad, I was like, I want to have a recycling plant. So like a lot of things is like when I was young and I see something, I'm like, wow, like this is what's happening. Like with climate change, I think my first introduction was when I was 12. I read an encyclopedia and I was like, what? And here I am, right? So it's like one moment I think I just watched something that really caught my like interest. And I'm like, this is actually going on. And so since then, it's just been, I started researching more. The older I got, I started to talk to people. I'm like, wow, okay, this is a huge problem. And like now you really see the blatant like endemic of it. Like no one's even hiding anymore.
Yeah.
It's blatant, it's a problem, and there's no one doing anything to stop it. So it's like, how can I help make that change? Yeah.
Well, you talk about when you were a child and the dreams that you had, and even earlier you were talking about um, seeing beyond what is to what could be. That's my way of kind of describing it. But so much of that is about having new information coming in
Yeah.
that kindles your imagination. And so much of you're doing with your information, your podcasting, and the data is about giving women and others information with
Yeah.
which to spark imagination,
Yeah.
from which then dreams can come. But then, of course, there's that one piece, which is all very mental. Like, then it's the translation
Yeah.
into the action and the infrastructure
Mhm.
that will help individuals realize their dreams. Because without the infrastructure, right? And that's what I'm hearing you say. That's why infrastructure, we got to change something.
Yeah.
And that's a really tall order. That's a big job.
Yeah.
You're talking about a country, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Definitely. It's like the exposure. When you have the exposure, then you also need the materials to, take what you've been exposed to and make it into something. And so they both work hand in hand. But I also think exposure can also prompt the production of materials, because people are like, well, I definitely need this now. Because they probably didn't think they needed it before till they found out about it. Like, oh, so you mean to tell me I don't have rights, right? So now I need my rights. So you now
Yeah.
use my rights.
Now I
Yeah.
need them. Right.
Yeah.
So there's you're talking about sitting in the gap between what is, which is really quite separated from what could be and what
Yeah.
should be, right? So how do you keep yourself from getting discouraged and or overwhelmed because that gap is so big?
I really don't know, to be honest.
Well, do you get discouraged? Do you feel overwhelmed?
Yes, like I just, especially like I don't know, today as well, like hearing from, like I keep bringing up the unrest just because it's been a huge part of my life for the past
Yeah.
2 weeks. Just hearing like seeing what happened at the Lekki toll gate and hearing from the president today, he just said absolutely nothing. I'm just like, are we ever going to get better? Like I just today actually just I don't know. I sat down. I'm just like, I feel like we are all just trapped in that country, and sometimes it looks like there is no way out.
Can we just stay with that for 1 minute? Because that feeling, we're trapped and there's no way out, that's almost beginning to be the language of trauma, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And so that's what I'm talking about. And do you think that maybe it's part of that? You could sink into despair or you can jump into action. Do you think that that is in part what fuels you and all this activity to try to find solutions
yeah,
for change?
yeah. Definitely, I do think like sometimes what it seems like what I was even saying earlier on, when I feel tired, I don't want to move, like do anything else. I remember like, okay, I still want to have all these achieved and I still want to make changes. So that prompts me to get back into like, the work of things and get back and get my energy again to be productive. So I also think that's kind of how it is. Like sometimes I feel like, especially with this whole situation, it's like, oh, are we, are we really gonna be like trapped in this? But then you don't have a choice but to think of like another way to approach something to change it, right? So it's like, okay, this didn't work. It seems like we're not going to get better, but then how can we? Then you think of like, maybe if we try it this way, or maybe if we try it that way. So almost spurs ingenuity. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's like a chat, but then okay, you have to go back and think, what did we do that didn't work? Maybe we should try a different way. So yeah,
So, again, it really speaks to Babuchi, this sustain, that one, these big shifts that we're all looking for in a lot of different areas are not overnight. changes, right? They require sustain. And for us to sustain effort, it requires consistent energy,
Yeah.
right? And of course, our visions give us energy. Um, Being aligned and feeling purposeful gives us energy. But what else funds you? You did already speak of your faith that also funds you. But how do you maintain, sustain? Because the problem is big and one has to constantly renew in order to be fresh and thinking and innovative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what sustains me is knowing that if I don't continue on this like positive forward moving path, then I could either retrograde or I could stop. And then who does that help? Right? So it's like almost like the war has been lost in a way. Like if I just don't keep going forward, it's like, okay, well, the changes that could have happened, I've let a bunch of people down, or we're almost going to go back to as we were. So it's, to me, it's like pushing forward is the only way to prevent failure.
Have you ever had a moment where you actually stopped pushing and let things, if temporarily, just crumble around you to sit in that for a
No,
minute?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I think I'm a person who, like, I always have a plan and a backup plan and a backup plan to that. And I'm not going to pretend like everything is going smoothly. No, things fall
Mm,
apart
yeah,
regardless, right?
yeah, yeah.
But I don't think I've ever just let things fall apart. Like, I don't think I ever did nothing and then things fell apart. It's always me trying to do something and it still falls apart. And I think that's also sometimes where I feel broken because I'm just like, I had backup plans to backup plans and still didn't work out. So, yeah,
So can we sit in that for a minute? Because I actually think that those moments are moments of transformation. Because regardless of how innovative we're being, we're always inside the box of our own thinking.
yeah,
And sometimes when things really fall apart and we it's an opportunity to step outside of what we thought was and open to some larger holding that can then shift perception into something that's much better, right?
yeah,
And I think that this process of periodically failing or having things crash in is a really organic process of change
yeah,
because it wipes away cataclysmically what was and presents one with this totally open moment where
yeah.
anything can be, right?
That is true. Now I think about it because I'm remembering something that did happen where, everything fell apart and I was like, well, I mean, at this point, clearly.
How did that go when you just stopped and opened up to something different?
Yeah.
Did
I was,
anything emerge?
yeah, I think I was able to clearly see a lot more paths that I could take. Um, so more options came up eventually. So I was like, oh, okay, I could probably do this and do that, as opposed to like what I initially thought of doing, where I was in my mind, I had planned. So I was like, what is the word? Narrowed, when you like
Narrowed? Mm-hmm.
had like a narrow vision. So I was only seeing like like that
Mm-hmm.
vision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When everything is kind of fell apart, I'm like, well, okay, let me see what else is out there. And then I saw a lot more opportunities and things were able to get a lot better. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, yeah, um, that's been maybe the situation where I just kind of didn't have any actual solid plans and things worked out. Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting because I'm going to be teaching a curriculum on the path, sharing the path to personal power for women. And in the end stages, it's a 12-week thing. But in the final couple of weeks of it, I have this process I call fluid dreaming. And it's all about responsive dreaming, which at times requires that one completely suspends what one knows to experience what is, right? And that there's this really important process of clearing the mind and getting really deep into that surrender
Yeah.
to be fresh and to see in a new way, and also to take advantage of how the ground and the landscape has changed since
Yeah.
last time you had that plan and that vision. Because
Yeah.
sometimes we lay out a plan, right? And then it becomes the thing, even when the ground and the circumstances have changed, right? And a better option would be to shift into something else, right? So that's interesting. So I'm glad that you had that experience, because I think that those, and not being afraid of those, right? Not working so hard with, I mean, I think it's really good to have plan A, plan B, whatever, but also feeling comfortable stepping back from everything,
Yeah.
because there could be new data coming in that could be truly pushing off in a miraculous new direction, but we can't see it because we're so invested in, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So now
Tracking.
into that one path, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have totally enjoyed talking with you today. I am so inspired by your enthusiasm, your energy, and above all, your compassion and commitment to other people. And, I just couldn't wish you more success and joy and happiness and clarity and all the good things for you and your work and the people that you're working with.
Thank you so much. Yeah.